Hi, I'm Valerie Engelhart, and in this video I am doing a loose portrait study without the use of a preliminary sketch. Now, off to the side, I have my iPad up with a reference image that I took, and I've isolated the values, meaning it's just in black and white, and I use an app called a Notenizer. It simplifies the shapes, because when you've got a person, really, it's not that complicated, but because when painting a person, it can get really intimidating. So it really helps to abstract things a bit and isolate those shapes. So right now, I'm just going in with Schmincke Ultra Granulating Tundra Orange. And I like this because it's a softer color and it kind of mimics a skin tone without me having to do a lot of mixing. Because I'm going to be focusing on my values, I am going to use a limited palette. So right now, I am just mapping the planes of the face. So places where like the eyes are set into the skull, that's going to be darker, shadow under the nose. And anywhere that I see a mid-tone or a dark tone in my reference, I'm adding this darker color, which I believe is Rockwell Canada Elf Wings. And then, because this side of the face is going to be lost in shadow, I am blending and bleeding that paint away. I do like to paint loose, almost dreamlike, almost an imagination, like as if you've never actually seen the person before, and you're kind of getting an idea of what they look like in your mind's eye. That's how I like to paint. So really, shapes and values, any of my paintings, be it animal, flower, abstract, just focus on values and shapes. And this is just a first wash. Like, watercolor does dry paler, so I'm not too worried. I can always go in and correct things later. And I love the magic of watercolor. It will create some of its own shapes and blooms, and so it's kind of nice to get it really wet and let it do its own thing as it dries. That way the watercolor does part of the work for me. That purple that I'm putting in is one of my favorite purples. It is a Rockwell Canada color called God's Back, and it is a much warmer violet. It splits into like a red and a blue, but it is definitely on the redder side. And I really like that for shadows and skin tones because skin is usually warm, and it's a lot better than using like a gray or a black. And even though there are a lot of artists who use blue in shadows and it looks gorgeous, whenever I do it, I have trouble with it, so I usually lean for the purple. So hair is one of my nemesis when it comes to painting a person. And I have to remember that you're really, just like everything else, painting a shape. But there's something about the movement of hair that I really struggle with. So I'm trying to, in this loose portrait study, just do a quick couple whips of my brush and letting it be. Because going in again and again can make it look labored and stiff and the opposite of what human hair is like. Now, I've gone in really dark there, and one of the reasons I went in dark is I like to use a technique of lifting. So where I make the entire area dark and then I dry off my brush and I just lift the pigment off the page. It creates a nice soft transition. And now, I don't know if you can tell, I'm actually gonna call out towards that bottom left. Do you see how that purple is splitting up? Isn't that gorgeous? I love using granulating paints that split because I didn't have to do anything extra. The paint did that on its own. And I think that is fabulous. And look at those marks that are happening up on the right eyebrow area. Like, that might bother some people, but I think those watermarks are just the coolest. Hi, Valerie here. I just wanted to pop in real quick and ask, do you want to paint with bold, vibrant watercolor? Well, I teach you how to paint this beautiful, dare I say, elegant elephant using bright tube paints and lovely texture effects. Just go down to the link below, and it doesn't cost any money. Sign up and you get a free watercolor lesson along with the line art so you can follow along. Okay, back to the video. And welcome back. So that first layer has dried, and you can see there's even this really big, beautiful bloom on the lower right portion of the face. And for areas that look really cool, leave them alone. And that's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to leave some of those places alone. The right side of the face is going to be in shadow anyway, because the person in this photo was sitting next to my window, and we get a lot of light from that side. So half of his face is illuminated, and so there's a kind of a stark contrast from one side to the other. I didn't want to make it too contrasting because I did want to keep a white background, which I just explained to say, you don't have to make your painting look like your reference photo. Go in with a goal in mind, and my goal for this was to practice painting a face without a sketch. It's a difficult thing for me to do, and that's why I want to get better at it. So as you saw, I painted in an eye and then I kind of just lifted it away. I do that a lot. That is one of those, I think, bad habits I have. But on one hand, it usually turns out okay, because by doing that, it sets the eyes back in the skull a bit, gives it more shadow. So it usually works out, but it definitely doesn't look like it while I'm painting it. So there's another tip, is don't call a painting a failure until it's done. And even then, it's not really a failure, as long as you learned and, you know, got those brush miles in and got to play with your paints. So cut yourself some slack. I gotta cut myself some slack too. So for the ear, I don't get too technical. I just look at it as a shape. And the reason I like to keep things loose is, well, when you look at a person, or anything really, are you really looking at and noticing every single detail, or is there something else that really catches your attention? So in this case, what caught my attention was the light and the way that he was glancing up in the photo I took. And even though I do take a lot of photos where there are people smiling and posing for the camera, you know, those good family photos, I like to paint candid photos. I like to capture people just as they are. And in this case, he was, I think, glancing up out the window. Maybe a bird had landed on the deck, because we have a lot of that happening. Maybe the crows were coming for him. That happens a lot. For some reason, the crows at my house do not like him. And he didn't even do anything. He just went out on the deck and they decided they hated him. All right, trying to give some more form to the face by adding some lighter shadows. Okay, going in with the lip now. So I don't want to like draw out lips in just an outline. So in my reference, I see shadows. So what I'm trying to do is paint shadow shapes. And that way, luckily, since human faces typically follow the same outline, you know, 2 eyes, a nose, mouth, chin, as long as I put some shadows in that area, it's pretty convincing that it is a human face. We're not getting into uncanny valley as long as I put things where they go. And how many times in like weird cartoon illustrations you can still recognize someone has a face as long as they have the right features in roughly the right spots. And so since I've got the features in, well, roughly the right spot, we are seeing a person emerge from the wash. Now I'm going in and adding a few strokes to demonstrate the shoulder on the other side of his body, just because it was looking a little, I wanted to fill in some of that space. It was seeming empty. And I like how the brush strokes have actually kind of come together in almost a curved V shape. Now, I usually don't like introducing new colors this late in the stage, but I just was not getting the deep dark value I wanted in some of those shadow areas on his shirt, so I've gone in and grabbed a very dark blue. This blue is Rockwell Canada Cosmic Sound. And just by adding that, it separates the shirt from the neck nicely, but without it having a hard line. And that's one of the things I like with this technique is things kind of flow in and out of each other, lost and found with, in this case, a lot of lost. But you can still tell, I hope at least, that I'm painting a person. Going back in with the eyes this time, and like everywhere else, I'll put in like broken lines. That way I'm not like just penciling in around the eyes like really bad raccoon eyeliner. Some lost and found edges, because there is a crease there, and I do want to have an outline to the eye, but I want it to be soft, and I don't want it to be so labored. Although with how much time I'm spending on this, it's definitely in danger of becoming labored. So I've put down the color, and I want the eye to have kind of a highlight, so I'm doing that lifting technique again, where I clean my brush, dry it on my paper towel, and lift the pigment to give it a kind of a glassy, shiny look. Now, call me lazy. It might be laziness, but part of it is I like to have a dominant eye. So on the other side, the side that's in shadow, I definitely want to illustrate that there's an eye there, and that I definitely do have the ability to paint two eyes. But I can't see this eye very well. And even though, yeah, sure, I know what it looks like, I want it to be a bit more ambiguous than the one that we see on the left. Throwing in some bold strokes now. Okay, I've let everything dry again, going back in with my purple and giving that eye another try. So I was going for it earlier and it just was not quite working out. And whenever you have something that is starting to frustrate you and it's not working out, step away. Let the painting dry. Go get yourself a treat. Go take a walk. Go do anything else. Because if you keep trying to work on something when you're frustrated, you're probably going to ruin it. So just take a step back. Come to it with some fresh eyes, and well, then maybe I can paint that eye. When I paint, it's a dance of put down the pigment, bleed it away, lift. Put down the pigment, bleed it away, lift. So one challenge I have for myself that I don't do very well because I tend to go a little automatic is I want to have more hard lines in my work where I put down a stroke and then don't blend it away, just leave it alone. And that is something that I am still working on and will probably be continuing to work on for a while. Going back into the lip area, because even though I do like that kind of ghostly look going on, I do recommend going in and darkening some shadows, because just adding that touch of dark really makes all of the other tones around it pop. Like how when I went into his shirt and I added a couple strokes of that very dark paint and it made everything else kind of come to life better. So don't be afraid to go into some areas and go dark. And here's the finished painting. It's amazing how things can really come together at the end. Well, if you liked this video, press that like button for me so I know to make more like it. And if you want to see more, press subscribe because I make videos every Monday and Thursday. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you later. Bye.